Warning. The following podcast contains spoilers for the film discussed, as well as strong language. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back to How Have We Not Seen? I'm Juliet.
I'm Nate.
I'm Mitch.
And welcome to our first episode of 2019. Happy New Year, guys!
Happy New Year, everybody! Those poor listeners having to listen to our god-awful screeching. Where'd you get the kazoo?
He always has a kazoo.
You know I have a kazoo.
And come on, it's just for funsies. It's the New Year. We gotta celebrate.
Well then.
Alright, so Nate, let's remind our listeners what this episode's movie is.
Alright. Now then, listeners. This episode, we will be watching The Muppet Christmas Carol. Bork, bork. And as I am the only one in our friend group to have seen this movie, I'm now going to ask the question. Guys, how have you guys not seen this movie?
Alright, I'll start. So technically, I have seen this movie, but it was in middle school right before winter break, and as often happens when you're watching a movie in middle school, everyone keeps talking over the movie, and no one just shuts up. So, I couldn't hear most of it. I can remember bits and pieces of the clips, but I guess I never felt a need to go back and watch it because everyone knows the story of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. It's like a classic, it's told every Christmas, and I was just like, if I get to it, I get to it. If not, that's fine too.
It's actually, like, the most adapted story of all time.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
There are more adaptations of the Christmas Carol than there are adaptations of any other story.
Yep.
Wow, really?
Yeah, I think the only one that comes close is Dracula.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Wow. That is super interesting, actually.
Got the Christ-like part, and you got the demonic part.
Well, it helps that both of them are very old, and they're both in public domain.
Yeah.
That is true.
Mitch.
Basically the same thing. I mean, I don't think it was middle school exactly. It was probably high school. But as you mentioned, everyone talks over movies in school, so I never got to actually get any information. This is kind of spoiler territory, but the last scene I swear I saw was the one part where somebody got thrown out of a building.
Well then,
Wow, I don't know who that would be.
Yeah, okay then, so...
The last thing I remember was when everyone knows the story, so I don't know if this is really a spoiler, but when Scrooge's girlfriend dumps him, and in this one she sings a song about it, and I remember the song made me cry, but I don't remember why.
Okay, that's fair enough, but
Yeah.
I take it you don't remember that many details beforehand, even.
No, I just know that Michael Caine is Scrooge. I just know that Gonzo and Rizzo narrate it.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Caine is Scrooge?
Yeah.
You don't know that?
Honey,
He's on the cover of the DVD.
It's been so long since I've seen this, Nate.
Well, so long since you've half seen it.
That's
Yeah.
true.
We gotta keep up our brand integrity here.
Yeah, well, since we both have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, guys, what are your expectations going to be?
High expectations.
You mean great expectations?
Thank you for understanding the reference I was trying to make.
Poor Dickens.
But yeah, it's the Muppets. You can't really go wrong with the Muppets.
I expect them to have dumb humor that is also brilliant at the same time, because whenever the Muppets adapt something, they know the source material, and they know how to make it funny and appealing to everyone. So yeah, I'm just expecting to have a real good time here with this movie.
Alright then, so let's get to watching it. We will take a short break, and when we get back, we will finally review A Muppet Christmas Carol.
It's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights.
Wish us luck.
And we're back! We have just finished watching A Muppet Christmas Carol, starring Michael Caine and Kermit the Frog. So guys, what were your thoughts on the movie? Juliet, let's start with you.
To quote the Swedish chef, Le film is okie dokie. I mean, come on, it's a Muppet movie. You can't go wrong with it. I loved it. It's great.
Mitch?
I liked it. I really liked it. Like, this is the third, maybe fourth rendition of A Christmas Carol I've ever seen, and this is probably one of my favorites.
All right.
Are you guys going to elaborate on anything more than just, I liked it?
Well, let me bring up one of the things that I liked about this movie. Now, this movie had some changes from the original Dickens story.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
The one that, I'll just say the one I wasn't a fan of to get it out of the way, and I'll go into the ones that I was a fan of. So, the one I wasn't a fan of was how they omitted Scrooge's sister, Fan, coming to pick him up and bring him home for Christmas. And the reason I didn't like that was, I feel like it showed that Scrooge did appreciate the Christmas magic as a child, And I thought it was an interesting take how in this one, he just never had it and was trying to learn it now as an adult. But I felt like that was a pivotal scene in the book because he promised his sister that he would always take care of Fred, his nephew. And not having that there, I felt like you missed like an integral part of who Scrooge was as a person and how he changed. And now the part of this movie that I really liked was at the end when he brought everyone together. He had gifts for Sam the Eagle and for Fozziwig, and he was giving gifts to the mice, and he brought everyone over for Christmas at the Cratchit's house, and when he finally made the donation, Beaker gave him his scarf as a Christmas present and as a gesture to say thank you. I thought those additions just brought out the beauty of finding the Christmas spirit in this movie, and it was just a joyous transition for Scrooge.
All right then, Mitch. What about your thoughts?
Before I get to my thoughts, obviously this is, a spoiler review, but this is the Christmas Carol, but I recommend, even if you haven't seen this movie, to go watch it.
Yes.
It is like the average Christmas Carol, but like we mentioned, or are about to mention, they made changes.
Yeah.
Not big ones, you might say somewhat big ones, but they made changes, and it's great.
It's the one time I wasn't mad at them for changing the source material. Yeah. I may have been irritated at one point, but most of them were good.
The humor from the Muppets managed to add flavor to the story without detracting from it like other,
Exactly.
like other more comedic versions of Christmas Carol do, like the shitty Jim Carrey one, or
it was okay.
Or the Looney Tunes version that I saw a few years back.
That one I'll give you. That wasn't my favorite.
Another good adaptation for kids, I feel, was the one they did with the other Disney characters where they had Scrooge McDuck. Like, I remember watching that as a kid. That was a good one.
I don't think I remember that one.
It was released in, the late 90s, early O's, I think. It came out on VHS, I want to say. But yeah, this was a good adaptation. I think Dickens would have liked it if he was around. I think he would have been charmed.
If Dickens was around, he'd probably be like, what the hell are those things?
True. And then
God.
Kermit would come up to him and just, give him a hug, and I don't know how he'd feel.
I must respectfully disagree. I think this is one of the, if not the best, Christmas Carol adaptations.
I can pretty much agree with that.
The only one that really compares, in my opinion, is Scrooged with Bill Murray.
I don't even know what that is.
Have you two seen it?
Nope.
God damn.
We'll do it next Christmas.
Yeah,
season. This will be our only Christmas film for this year.
Well, I mean, for last year, because it's the new year.
Yeah.
But,
I would say my favorite version was when Patrick Stewart, he did a one-man show of Christmas Carol in Broadway and in London.
What?
And there's a CD recording of it that I listen to every year with my mother where he does the entire book as all the characters.
Are you serious?
Yes, and it's amazing. I would say that's probably my favorite version. I don't know how this would stack up. I don't know exactly where I would rank this, but I still love it.
well, another thing I must respectfully disagree with. I don't think they lost much by getting rid of Fan. Well, on one hand, yes, it can be important to show that Scrooge did, at one point in his life, have Christmas cheer. But we kind of had that already with, Fozziwig in this movie. But
which is brilliant, by the way.
I think it was more important to show the isolation he experienced as a kid when he's constantly just studying and learning to be a man to the point that he forgot what it was like to be a kid.
Yeah.
I feel like that Fan kind of interrupts that development.
I don't know. I feel like Fan was one of the more touching moments of the book when Scrooge, when the spirit asks him, she lived a short life. He said, yes, she had an enlarged heart, and she had a son. And then it makes him pause and think, and the ghost says, what are you thinking of? And he said, I just wish I had been kinder to my nephew, now that you've reminded me of what a gentle soul his mother was. Because it feels like the best way to honor his sister is to be kind to her child.
That's a fair point.
Alright, I'll concede that. Now then, you were mentioning Patrick Stewart. What was your opinion of Michael Caine as Scrooge?
Oh, Michael Caine was good casting. I mean, come on. We were talking, Mitch, about while we were watching this, is that the human performers in this movie have to be very serious because the Muppets are zany, so they have to be the yin and yang.
You need a contrast.
Exactly, and I feel like he was the good contrast.
Oh, he was fantastic.
He acted it very seriously, and he was really good during the touching moments because you could tell what he was thinking in moments where it was important to know what he was thinking, and in moments where you weren't sure how he was feeling. It was good that he didn't give it away all that much.
The perfect scene to illustrate that is the scene when he's in the Cratchit house?
Cratchit, not Crotchet! God.
The Cratchit house with the ghost of Christmas Present. And, they were doing the song. I forget the name of the song, but it just kept constantly cutting to Scrooge's face, and you could, see he's, emotionally overwhelmed at this family who obviously love each other with what little they have. Yeah. And I thought that was a fantastic performance done by Michael Caine.
I also really liked his moment when he's with the Ghost of Christmas Past, and he's watching himself break up with his love. How he starts badly, tearfully trying to sing along with her.
Oh, yeah.
About the love is gone.
That's a deleted scene, by the way. We were able to watch that.
We switched back and forth between the
Because,
theatrical cut and the director's cut.
We have an old crummy disc.
Hey, you know, it worked out.
That disc is an antique.
It's not VHS, but...
I will say what I was pleasantly surprised by was when they gave Michael Caine his one song. He did a pretty good job. I've never heard him sing before, but he was good with what they gave him. And I think that's because back then they knew to write the song in his range so he wasn't straining or trying to surprise everyone by being a grandiose singer. It's like, no, they knew his range, they knew what he was and wasn't capable of, and they worked with it. And so it was a good, decent song.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing as well, because he wasn't really, like you mentioned, trying to go for anything. He was just doing his normal voice, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit...
Lower?
It got a
maybe
little
at
high
times.
at one point, yeah.
Yeah, but he was basically just same voice, and I actually appreciated that. I don't know, I just felt like that's something Scrooge would do.
I think he does a good job of portraying both the cold-hearted, the flint in the dark kind of Scrooge. And then he also displays the human element of Scrooge when he opens up. I think he does a good job at both of them, and a lot of other actors can only do one or the other. They aren't good at being the crotchety old man, or they aren't good at being the kind-hearted man.
The transition is believable because he makes the character development that good.
Especially during the Ghost of Christmas Presents interlude, I would argue.
Oh, yeah. This was one of my favorite Scrooge performances, not just because of amazing acting, which is the case, but also because I've never seen Scrooge this, like, as you mentioned, Flint in the dark?
When Gonzo, or Charles Dickens, is describing him,
which was great.
He was like a piece of flint. It was like hard as flint. Or something like that.
Some sort of analogy, yeah.
Yeah, that kind of analogy. But
this was one of the most, like, I'm not sure crude, but I
crotchety.
suppose crotchety depictions of Mr. Scrooge that I've ever seen. And I haven't read the book, I'll be honest, but I know.
Oh.
Midge, we all know you can't read.
I can't read. That's a joke we have.
Yes, Mitch actually can read. He's very smart, okay?
Yes, haha, joke.
But yeah, I've never seen a Scrooge portrayed this, like, crotchety, like, and I was so amazed at the performance. I just loved it.
Michael Caine, good
Caine.
job.
Fantastic.
Good job.
Now, we've talked a lot about the humans, but
the Muppets.
What about the Muppet performances?
All right, who do you want to start? Well, Mitch actually has a list right here, so what do you say we just go down the list?
Yeah. Let's go with Scrooge's right-hand man, Kermit.
Or you mean Bob Cratchit?
Bob Cratchit.
Cratchit,
not Crotchet!
God.
Say it with me. Cratchit.
No! You did that one on purpose, asshole.
That was actually accidental.
All
right, Kermit. Yeah, I mean, it was a safe choice.
Although this was the first time they had to really replace Jim Henson.
Yeah.
This was the first movie they made after Jim Henson's passing, so
And Kermit has I think that was intentional that they gave Kermit the line, there are meetings and there are partings in life and we just have to accept it.
Yeah, that wasn't in any of the adaptation of A Christmas Carol.
Who was your favorite Muppet performance?
Oh, you can't ask me that.
I can ask you that. I just did.
I know who mine is.
All right.
The dynamic duo of Gonzo as Dickens and Rizzo as himself.
Really?
They were... Yep, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like them too, but I also know quite a few people who don't.
I like them in the sense that it's like this, the character trope in movies of the unlikely pair, the oil and the water that work together because they are so different. And I feel like by having the two of them as the narrators, they were able to have so much physical comedy that you expect in a Muppets movie, and is also fun for the kids, but it's smartly done and it's hilarious for the adults. Like when they keep falling off the window ledge, or when they grab onto the Ghost of Christmas Past with the rope and just crash through all the trees. I love the dynamic that they had together, and I liked having them as the constant throughout this movie. And we were talking about, you and I, about the brilliant moment where it's like, they saw the Ghost of Christmas Future, and Rizzo goes, "This is too scary even for me." And Gonzo goes, "Agreed, we'll meet you at the end of the finale," and they leave.
Yeah, when a little kid me, when I saw that moment, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, like, I I really appreciate that scene because that just shows that, hey, we want to try and keep the tone of the scene as, kind of a little comical because it's Muppets, but we also want it to be mostly grim, dark, foreboding.
Because that's where it hits the most for Scrooge, too, and having them there with their comedy wouldn't have worked now that you bring it up.
There's a term for that. Shoo out the clowns. It's usually a point in a movie, series, or book where you might have, comedic characters, but once stuff starts getting heavy, they're killed off or written out, or they disappear briefly so that there's a greater impact to the heavy moments.
And then also to mention that Gonzo and Rizzo have the quality of the invisible omniscient narrator because, Gonzo is a storyteller as Dickens. And then the one moment where they are seen is when Scrooge tells them Merry Christmas when he's changed.
Yeah. Well, also when Gonzo corrects Sam the Eagle's...
we'll get to that.
It's the American way.
Sam...
Oh, it's the British way.
I just really love, their portrayals as, narrators and whatnot, because there's going to be a lot of kids watching this movie who may have never heard of A Christmas Carol.
This is probably the first introduction to it.
Exactly, and it helps people who have never seen A Christmas Carol, and it helps really young kids who can't follow things too well. Or just anybody who can't follow things too well. It helps them figure out what's happening and whatnot, and it just,
But they don't handhold you, they don't treat the kids as stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a good balance. It's a very good balance.
They're just obvious about what's happening, really.
Yeah. Well, I don't think as good as an introduction because it's all downhill from here, if you ask me. This is the best Christmas Carol adaptation, and I will fight you on that.
I'm not disagreeing with you, my man. I am not disagreeing.
I will say for me it's number 2 just because I am very partial to Patrick Stewart and I love the original text. I say this is a good adaptation, but I would say it's not my favorite, but I still love it, if that makes sense.
I'm actually really tempted to go check that out later.
Do check it out. I think you'll like it for a different way.
Yeah, they're both, you would agree in saying they're completely different, right?
Oh, they're totally different, but I love them in different ways.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Let's talk about some other Muppets in this movie. What's next on the list, Mitch?
Let's see. How about, the Marleys? Why not,
We're Marley and Marley! They had the catchiest song in the whole thing. You can't deny that.
Oh, I like their song. It's great. I appreciate how their song is, wacky, zany, but it's also, it gives the point. It gives the point of their entire scene within, a 4, maybe 5-minute song.
There's one thing I didn't like about it, or I thought that they handled the wrong way, was when they show the Marleys' chains. Mm-hmm. I didn't like how long they were. I mean, they're supposed to be long, but the big moment in the book is when Marley looks at Ebenezer and says, "Yours is a ponderous chain, Ebenezer," implying that it's maybe 3 times as long, 5 times as long, 20 times as long. And I get that might have been for exaggeration, but I just thought it took away from the impact of listen, our chain is pretty big, but yours is even worse.
Well, that's why their chain had to be that. It would have been, if you had a tiny little chain dragging behind them, it would not have had the same impact.
No, but just one of
I'm pretty sure in the story, isn't the chain, aren't the chains huge?
They are, but Ebenezer's is the biggest of them all.
Well, you can't see it. That's why you have to go look at the Marleys to really understand just how fucked he is.
I think the real complaint here from both of you isn't about the size of the chains, it's the fact that they didn't have that line in this movie.
Yeah, that's my thing. It's it would have added a bit more gravitas for me. I mean, it's a Muppets movie, so, gravitas might seem a little misplaced, but I don't know. I just feel like that was another good moment in the book that could have been put in there. But keep in mind, it's a pretty good adaptation. This is us having to nitpick here, because we're reviewing this movie. Come on.
I know you were super weirded out by the Ghost of Christmas Past's appearance.
Oh, we'll get to that later. Mitch first.
I was actually thrown off by the fact that it was both, the Marley brothers were both of the old men.
You mean Statler and Waldorf?
Yeah, I'm not too deep into the Muppets lore, honestly. But...
Did you have a childhood? No, I'm kidding.
I do have the GBA game from them.
The what?
Yeah, they have a Game Boy Advance.
I know what a Game Boy Advance is, but they had a game of that?
Not the Christmas Carol, but Muppets, yeah. It's pretty fun. But anyways,
Oh, can we talk about the one moment that made you jump where they talked about how they kicked the orphans out of the orphanage on Christmas and shoved them in snowbanks?
oh
No, they
my
didn't shove them in
God.
snowbanks. The kids were just left in the snow because, hey, they were evicted.
Ha!
The Marleys were... I'm glad they commented on it, because they are so evil in that song.
They're heartless.
They are heartless, but they're laughing at other people's pain. Like, that's...
They're hecklers, it's what they do.
Yeah, I mean, jeez, holy crap. They were, like, really, like, just going at it.
The one part where it wasn't as dark was when we cut to them and saw them when they were younger, heckling Fozzie's speech, because that's what they do on The Muppet Show. And they were like, what the hell was that? There was no point to it. It was short. I liked it!
Young Statler and Waldorf is one of those things that just should not be.
It was necessary for the flashback, but that's another thing that's different from the book, is like the Marleys never, or
Well, there was
Marley
only
never
one.
worked for Fezziwig.
Yeah, that's true. Like,
Yeah.
I found that to be an interesting little thing.
Maybe they just wanted continuity.
Oh yeah, they probably just wanted that little snippet of a little thing right there.
Yeah, but have you noticed that even though Statler and Waldorf are playing the Marleys, Jacob and Robert, they still have a store named Statler and Waldorf that you can clearly see. I was just like, huh,
Really?
yeah, I don't know.
All right, then. We've covered the Cratchits. We've covered the Marleys.
Anyone else?
Shall we
on
get
this?
to the spirits?
Let's just have a little bit of a comment about Scrooge's nephew and
And Tiny Tim?
well, we'll get to him later, but
Okay.
with his nephew and I believe her name was Belle as well.
Belle was his...
Scrooge's fiance?
Yeah, I mean they were both minor characters, but you know we might as well have something to mention about them.
Fred was fine.
I must agree, he was very by the book.
Yeah,
Not very memorable.
not memorable.
Acting a bit...
Eh.
I mean, like, you know, sometimes good acting isn't always memorable.
You know, Colin Firth did a good job as Fred in the Jim Carrey version. He was very good as Fred in that one. He made Fred memorable. Listen, that movie has good parts in it, so...
Yeah, and a rotten apple might still have some good parts. Doesn't mean I'm going to eat a rotten apple.
We're talking
Differing
about the
opinions.
Muppets.
Anyway,
We're talking about the Muppets.
yeah, Fred was fine. The game where they were trying to guess what he was thinking and it turned out to be Scrooge was, yeah, that was okay.
I like the Muppets in that. Oh my god.
They had the pigs and like the weird little like,
The dog.
and then the little street swamp people that they dragged up.
You were taken aback by the designs and
They looked like they'd been squashed.
What
All right.
about Belle?
I know you didn't like her singing voice, Juliet.
No, it felt very nasally. It didn't feel like she was singing at the front of her mouth. It felt like she was singing at the back of her mouth, which isn't a healthy practice to do. It also felt very breathy, and you want to have a strong resonance when you're singing. And also, it's like, some of her vowels were just garbage. I'm kicking into singer mode, by the way. I'm really sorry for throwing people off by getting technical, but it's just like, when you study voice for a certain point, you can pick up what a singer is doing right and what they're doing wrong. And the message of the song was beautiful, but for me, just the way she was singing it overshadowed the lyrics for me. I don't know how you guys felt about her singing voice.
Well, I'm not very well versed into the whole singing technique that you were just discussing. I liked it. You know, little Nate was sad, and now that I'm older, it actually hurts a bit more.
It's still a sad song, especially when you see Scrooge singing it.
That's when
you feel for him.
Yeah, that's when you're like, oh.
That's when the scene went from good to great.
Exactly.
Just digging that sword in the chest a little further. I would argue though that see we mentioned before we cut back and forth between the theatrical version and the extended cut. And the extended cut had Belle's song, but in the theatrical cut it didn't have it. And I would argue that made Belle's character less memorable by cutting the song.
Really?
Well, yeah, the song was like 75% of her screen time.
That's fair.
It was. And it basically said the message of the quote that she had in the book, which was, "Another idol has replaced me, a golden one." And the song conveyed that message pretty well without having to say those exact words. Like, we all knew what she was talking about. She's like, you don't love me anymore, you're just obsessed with greed and money. I gotta bail.
The love is gone.
It's too bad it was a deleted scene.
Yeah, that's too bad, yeah.
But overall, I liked that scene. It was pretty good.
Yeah. Alright, who are the other Muppets we have left to talk about before we get to the spirits?
Apart from Tiny Tim, I think that's about it.
Alright, let's talk about Tiny Tim, Robin
So
Frog.
small.
So small.
He's adorable. I wish Robin was recognized more, because people forget that Robin exists sometimes.
How could you ever?
Yeah.
Well, he is kind of small.
And his little singing voice is so adorable.
Oh.
Then he lifts him up on the kitchen table and you realize how small he is. It's just like, aww.
He was so cute.
Kind of reminds me when I was like picking up my little kitten back when they were all tiny. I don't put my hand underneath them like that.
Yeah.
That was adorable.
I thought the way the kids were portrayed in this was pretty good.
They seem like good, decent kids.
Yeah, they seem like good kids. You know, they were played well, obviously.
Certainly were able to restrain themselves better around the chestnuts than their mother.
And, you know, when she answered the door when Scrooge was there, she was not afraid to fight for her man. She was ready to kick the shit out of him.
Oh, yeah, she was about to throw hands.
Miss Piggy played Mrs. Cratchit, by the way. She was ready to throw hands.
Yeah.
Oh, and one quick mention before we get to, well, we already addressed it. Fozziwig for Fezziwig. That was brilliant with his rubber chicken factory. Come on. What else are they going to do?
I loved that line. That was hilarious.
It made perfect sense.
Animal. I loved Animal in that scene.
Quiet! Thank you, Animal.
You probably just blasted out our listeners' poor eardrums.
Well, yeah, Mitchell edited that. Yeah, and then he goes nuts all over the drums, which reminds me, you need to see his drum battle with David Grohl. It was great.
I just loved how he was dying on the inside when she's forced to play
the triangle.
just something civil.
Alright, now let's get into the spirits.
Alright, creepy ghosts of the Christmas past.
Yeah, I get the point in the book where it's like you're not supposed to be able to tell their age, but I've never seen Dark Crystal, but it reminded me of some of the creepy stills I've seen of some of those puppets. I felt uncomfortable.
I'm sorry, but that is so on point. That's incredible. I didn't even think about that.
Maybe that was like a puppet character they were going to use, but decided not to, and then recycled for this movie. I wouldn't be surprised if that was it.
Gelfling and Skeksis work together.
Hey, Nate, have you seen...
Dark Crystal?
Yeah.
Yep. I saw it in theaters.
It's good.
I've heard it's
Jim Henson also did the work in that as well.
Yeah, it was. He directed it and stuff like that. I think it was pretty bold to try to make a science fiction fantasy type of movie on that scale.
I think he did well.
There's like a comic book series about it too.
Really?
Yeah, it came out like a couple of years after the movie, I want to say a while after.
Anyway, the term that you two are looking for, I think, is the uncanny valley.
Yes, exactly.
What's that?
Basically, there is a valley of familiarity and comfort when you see something as it begins to resemble more and more like a human being, right? But then there's a point where it looks human, but not quite, in subtle ways, and then it suddenly dips all the way back from just neutral to creepy, and then it moves its way back up.
Yeah, the unfamiliar about that.
As you get to the point where it looks, so like, a rock is neutral, right?
Yeah.
And then you might see like an animal, and like a cat. A cat has a face, it has eyes and a nose. And then it gets more familiar. You might, like the familiarity of like a chimp's face, right? And then it gets to like those creepy animatronics that the Japanese make, or a corpse, or
like a creepy dummy or puppet.
And that's when it goes from neutral to just
get
like
this away from me.
Exactly. And then as it becomes more and more lifelike, that's when it starts climbing back up. That's the uncanny valley. That freaking Ghost of Christmas Past was all the way at the bottom of the valley.
I thought you liked the Ghost of Christmas Past.
I liked how it was supposed to be unsettling.
I agree with that.
That would be like me not liking the design for the alien in Alien just because it looks scary.
I thought the voice actress who did her was very good. She sounded very innocent.
Oh, yeah. I liked that.
Good job, kid.
The voice acting in this entire movie was great, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, there was no real fault, as far as I remember.
All right, shall we discuss the Ghost of Christmas Present?
Well, of course, we must come to get to know him better, man.
Hey! All right, so basically, Yukon Cornelius mixed with Hagrid.
Mixed with Santa Claus.
Mixed with Santa. Boom.
Oh, yeah. I love the Ghost of Christmas Present in this.
Yeah.
Like, the puppetry was fantastic, in my opinion.
Yeah, like the one bit that really stuck out to me was when they're watching the Cratchit dinner through the window, when Scrooge comments on, like, what was it, like, such a fragile child? It was like, no, about Tiny Tim specifically, such like a...
What a child or something
Yeah, and then like the way that the Ghost of Christmas Present just sadly closes his eyes and bows his head slightly.
Oh,
that was fantastic.
I didn't even notice
this
that.
like
so
the stuff like that just really demonstrates why like the Henson Company are masters at their craft.
Yes. I also we both noticed this, Mitch, you and I, how Well, you noticed one part particularly where he has like short-term memory because he can only remember the here and now being from the present. He can't remember what he said 5 seconds ago.
Yeah, like he's all about the here and now and whatnot.
Yeah, and as the present draws closer and closer to an end, he gets older and older.
Oh, yeah.
And they showed it in his beard with the whitening of his hair, and I'm like, you guys, I love your attention to detail. That's why you guys are so good.
One of my favorite shots about that is when they were moving from the Cratchit house to the graveyard. And in the Cratchit house, you could see his beard. It's almost completely white, but there's still hints of his red hair. But as it transitions into the next shot, it shows his beard completely white, all gray. It's just completely old. And I don't know why, I found that to be such a little thing that they did really well.
It's the subtleties.
The subtleties.
Yeah.
I'm kind of, I find it interesting. You have been talking a lot about the differences from the text.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you haven't mentioned the 2 children that were
I
hiding.
was gonna bring that up, yeah. In some versions they keep it, in some versions they don't. What do they want? And, I forget what the other one is.
That's probably why they got rid of them.
Yeah.
Because they're not that memorable.
I mean, like, some people find them memorable, but you notice they get removed from a lot of adaptations.
Yeah,
Really?
they do get removed from a lot of adaptations. That's probably why I didn't mention it, because their removal for me doesn't feel all that impactful for me that they're gone, you know what I mean? In some versions they work, in some versions they don't. I don't know how they would have played out in this.
I think the reason why they got rid of it, really, the Ghost of Christmas Present is clearly the most friendly.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one who brings out the warmth in Scrooge's heart.
And that would have just been...
That would have been a sour end when all of a sudden, the jolly guy's just like, oh, and by the way, this is Want, and this is like...
Some other kid!
These are the 2, beware this child most of all, Scrooge.
Yeah.
That would have been awful. Like, I remember I saw...
These are mankind's and they cling to me.
Yeah, like I remember seeing a theatrical adaptation like that, and it just killed the mood. Where they had those 2 children.
Yeah, that probably would have been out of place for a
get...
Muppets movie, too.
Yeah.
And, on another note, with the departure of the Ghost of Christmas Present, I remember we were all talking about how awful the effect was.
The sparkles, oh god.
The fading out was really good. If they had just kept the fading out and got rid of those damn sparkles.
I mean, it's not like movie breaking. It was just I wouldn't say off-putting. It was just a little like,
It sucked you out of the moment, though.
silly.
It's like...
A bit silly, yeah.
Yeah, a bit silly. And the voice actor for the Ghost of Christmas Present was very good as well. He had a nice comforting voice and a nice jolly voice.
He reminded me a lot of Hagrid, which I know Julia already mentioned, but like just
you brought it up though.
The voice acting, that's what first got me into thinking of Hagrid. Like it was just
really.
I mean, obviously, the whole character appeal with like the visual features and whatnot, like the fact that he's massive.
I was talking about the voice.
Oh. What's wrong with the voice?
No, I like the voice. I was talking about the voice doesn't feel like Hagrid-y.
Well, I thought it was like a very comforting.
It felt more like a Santa Claus kind of voice.
That's fair. You can glean different stuff from it, and I guess that's the main point, that he's supposed to be like Santa Claus-esque.
Oh yeah, like the old British Father Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who wore green.
Way.
Father Christmas wore green. I think he had a red beard.
There you go.
Really?
Yeah.
Just shows they've done their homework. That's the one thing about the Muppets. Like I said in the intro,
Well, that's why he's
smart.
that's why he's like in the book.
Oh yeah, and the illustrations. All right, Mitch, let's talk about your favorite puppet with the spirits. The Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come.
Just those introductory 2 notes. Dun-dun.
My favorite out of every single Christmas Carol, out of all the 3 spirits, it is always the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. Just because it immediately sets the mood, and it's like, oh, here's where things change.
This is when shit gets real.
When shit hits the fan.
And you always notice, that's when they always have the most divergent design. Ghost of Christmas Present is almost always a big, jolly, red-bearded man with green robes. Ghost of Christmas Past is always glowing, kind of weird looking.
Ethereal.
Ghost of Christmas Future is never the same. Sometimes it looks like the Grim Reaper. Sometimes it looks like a creepy pale woman in a hood. Sometimes it looks like a giant hand.
Can I tell you about one version they did?
The dead Tiny Tim.
It was Dead Tiny Tim one year for the Ghost of Christmas Future.
Too on the nose, if you ask me.
Oh, no, I loved that. Like, when we left the theater, my dad looked at me and went, that kid could point.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Oh, so good.
Out of every Christmas Carol I've seen, this is my favorite Ghost of Christmas Future.
Yeah.
Is it the Muppety hands?
It's see, at first I wasn't sure. Like, the hands, at first I thought they were just pure prosthetics that they would switch out when, like, not pointing and pointing. But then I was looking at its finger, and it started moving. And I don't know why that blew my mind, because the hands looked amazing to me. It must have been just a person with, like, gloves on. But for some reason, that just blew my mind.
Or maybe animatronic hands, too, that they were controlling. Like, they had giant gloves, had the hand, and then the little letters.
Yeah, it's almost like these guys are masters of puppeteering.
What? Can we also talk about the part where it was very obvious that this guy was on wheels?
Oh, yeah.
That
wasn't a bad... That's not to say that was bad. I liked the fact that they were on wheels. I like the fact that the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come was on wheels. It just adds more of an ethereal
He has
look.
a glide.
He has a glide, and, you know, it's the Muppets. It's a little bit silly, which I kind of actually appreciate about their portrayal of the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. The fact that, yeah, still scary and kind of creepy and whatnot. Well, not really scary, but you know what I mean.
Ominous.
Ominous, thank you.
Yeah.
But it's still a bit silly. Like, there's still little silly things, like...
I think it's hard to put it into terms of the Ghost of Christmas Future's design, because you're right, it's not outright scary, but it is ominous. Mm-hmm. But the way the hands are molded, the fine contours to them, just looking at it, you can immediately know this is a Jim Henson creation.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
It's very distinct.
It was a beautiful design.
Can we also talk about the one funny moment where he's pointing at the tombstone and Scrooge is like, oh, you mean this one? And he just points again. He's like, oh, no, it's this one.
Well, it was more of a silent, like a quiet moment. But
oh, no, but I was just illustrating the point.
It was just a little thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny.
It's interesting that you find that funny. I always consider it more of like he knows what he's going to see.
Exactly.
But he's
yeah, but that's why it's funny, because like he's trying to distract on purpose.
I do want to talk about that.
Go ahead.
Like, just in terms of general Christmas Carol, not even just the Muppets. I just love the fact that throughout the entire scene, like, you can just tell he knows it's him who's dead. Like, he knows. In almost every single interpretation, he's not surprised that it's him. He knows it's him, but he just wants to deny it. And he's begging for the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come to just let him go home so he doesn't have to see all this sadness and cold detachment about his death. Especially with how contrasted it was when they were showing the Crash It house and the loss of Tiny Tim.
Oof.
That most certainly is a fantastic scene, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
That one line. Yeah, Father's been walking a little slower these past 2 evenings.
I think that's in the book, too.
Oh. But it is one thing to imagine that the Bob Cratchit is another thing to imagine that Kermit the Frog.
Oh.
Kermit's just so put upon all the time. He doesn't need this extra sorrow in his life.
You know, if we're going to talk about Kermit walking, you did want me to mention that little anecdote about the how they were able to do the bit where Kermit's walking down the street with Tiny Tim.
Oh, yeah. Put that in. We'll talk about anecdotes very briefly.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah, basically, for the viewers who are unaware, what they did is that they had a rotating cylinder designed to look like the street, and they just had Kermit standing atop of it, and they move his legs up and down. But due to the rolling and how they slowly moved the set stuff by, it gave the impression that he's just walking down a hilly road.
Yep. My anecdote for this, which I found on like Facebook, I think, was that when Michael Caine, I think it was on their first day of filming or when they approached him about doing this part, he said, I am going to act this role as seriously as I would in any other movie.
My fucking man.
You're the best, dude.
That's what makes Muppet movies work.
Yeah.
I love Michael Caine.
We love you in this movie, dude.
The Muppets are actors. They aren't just set pieces.
Oh, they are actors.
They went to Stanislavski's. They studied the method. They went to the actor studio with Lee Strasberg. They know their shit.
Did y'all see the TED Ed talk with Kermit the Frog?
No.
No.
It's so good.
Oh, I want to see that.
They do it so well. Like, obviously you wouldn't know that he's a puppet, but I just found that incredible. The fact that he's live in front of so many people.
He always feels real.
And he always feels real, no matter what.
They don't break the immersion. They never list Kermit the Frog as a character being played. They always list Kermit the Frog as the actor.
They do, yeah.
I really got to give props to everybody in the Muppets. You know, just whatever the Muppets are in. Because, like, yeah, in the end credits, sure, yeah, they'll get credit, I believe, but...
They do, but they never list who they play.
Exactly.
They always just list it as Muppet performers.
Yes.
I just find that incredible that people are able to, like, give up recognition just so that way a character is able to be more real.
Let's talk about the music in this movie.
Oh, loved it. Loved it. Every single song. I personally loved every single song.
I would say not all of them are memorable, but the most memorable is Marley and Marley.
Marley Marley is very memorable, but I also like the Kermit the Frog going, just one more sleep till Christmas. And that's my horrible Kermit the Frog impression for everyone.
That's okay.
I'm glad we all have different opinions on, like, our favorite songs, because, like, mine is the last one.
Oh, when Scrooge is doing the big Christmas feast for everybody?
Yeah,
That
like,
was sweet.
it's just so thematically, like, different from what I've seen in every other rendition of A Christmas Carol.
Yeah.
Because we've seen Scrooge over and over just do these nice things, but here we're in the mindset, and he's finally, like, talking about stuff and what he's learned, and I just loved this entire montage of, here, you get something, you get something, you get
Everybody
something.
gets something.
Continuity,
Yeah.
giving, Fozzie gifts, the little trolling he does when he goes to the Cratchit household, the way that he says, God bless us, everyone, instead of Tiny Tim.
It was
Yeah.
I just loved it. It was so heartwarming.
Yeah.
I loved the mice getting the cheese.
The nieces.
And he finds the little homeless bunny and has him bring the turkey.
Oh.
Aw.
I just loved this movie so much.
Music fun fact that I told you guys, but that our audience might not know. The composer of these songs was Paul Williams, so he's done a lot of music for the Muppets. He also produced Daft Punk when they released their first album.
Wait, what?
He did. He was
Oh
the
my
producer for
God.
Daft Punk.
I think you just blew Mitch's mind.
Yep.
I love Daft Punk. I had no idea.
He did. He was the producer for the album. He also voiced the Penguin on Batman the Animated Series, and he plays one of the Justices of Genovia in Princess Diaries too, so he's had an interesting career.
I honestly...
He really voices the Penguin?
Yes, he does. He's mentioned the it was in a behind the scenes where they talk about all the actors that they hired to play the villains.
Nate is fact-checking that right now.
My father's a Batman fan. He comes up in the credits. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. First of all, I didn't even know that there was a second Princess Diaries.
Oh, I do. Chris Pine's in it.
Chris Pine, who's that again?
Captain Kirk in the modern Star Trek movies.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, is he?
I'm looking it up.
Alright. We'll keep talking about the music. It fits the tone of the movie.
I had pretty much forgotten that there was this many songs in this.
There were a lot.
One thing I want to mention, as I mentioned before, I've only seen a very short portion of this movie, but as soon as the first
Yeah, you're
song...
right. He voices the Penguin.
Yes!
Nice. But as soon as the first person song, the song describing how crotchety Ebenezer Scrooge is, I remember it hit the chorus, and I was like, yep, oh my god, I remember this. Wow.
There goes Mr. Outrage. There goes Mr. Sneer.
Such a good, memorable song. I loved it as a kid.
Can we talk about one thing that I briefly forgot? How Scrooge has his little rat Clarks, and then he gets them cold for Christmas because they've been complaining about how cold it is. That was sweet.
Oh, the rats, they were obviously there for comedic effect. And
Yeah.
They hit all points.
They did.
They were great. They weren't annoying at all. They weren't, like, useless. They were nice. I loved them.
I think because they also made sure their role was minimal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true. They weren't essential.
And they rallied behind Kermit to make sure that they could get the day off so he wasn't alone. It was all of them wanting the day off.
That's one thing I also want to mention. When Kermit's trying to, like, get the day off for Christmas, I loved the fact that he's trying to, like, reason with Scrooge, because in every other rendition I've seen, he just asks, and he gets it, but he and the rats had to kind of really fight for it.
They had to use cold logic.
They had to use cold logic.
It's like none of the other businesses will be open, so you'll be losing money having your business open.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're here, that means burning more coal, which we know you hate. They know how to negotiate.
I loved it. I just loved
Well, of
that
course they
little
know how to
detail.
negotiate. They had to work under Scrooge.
Yeah.
This movie was an hour and a half long, and I feel as though pretty much all of the time was used well.
Yeah, the pacing was perfect in this movie.
I loved it. The little differences in time, like what they did, I just thought that was great.
Let's talk about some other things that were great and not so great. The transitions and the visual effects.
The transitions were really great.
They were amazing.
Fantastic.
The scene where he's like groveling before the ghost of Christmas yet to come, clutching to his robes, and then he falls and he's clutching his sheets. Oh, good. Brilliant.
Or when the Ghost of Christmas Future, once again, when they're at the alleyway, and then as it turns to point, how then the sweep of the arm hides the change in shot until you suddenly realize you're at the Cratchit's house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or,
when immediately after Scrooge had dealt with Belle during the
Yes!
Christmas past set, sitting down, I believe crying.
On the bridge.
Yeah, and it just faded out, and it was such a great, slow transition.
Alright, let's talk about the visual effects and what was dated but cute and dated but crap.
Dated but cute, when they're going into the future.
Yeah, the little swirl.
I liked that.
The effects for the Ghost of Christmas Past were dated, but I think it just makes it good and creepy.
Yeah.
The one effect that was really bad was when they were sliding on the penguin's ice slide. that was bad.
I think that was almost bad, maybe on a little purpose, because, like, it's supposed to be wacky, zany Muppets. I feel as though they saw how weird and dumb it looked, and they're like, oh, we gotta keep that in.
More specifically, I think it was Kermit sliding that looked,
Kermit sliding looked weird. The penguins looked
It's the
normal.
hop.
Kermit looked
The
weird.
hop is what sealed it.
That's it. Yeah, I don't know why, but there was the one shot of Kermit looking at the moon, and he wasn't even doing anything. But
Just standing and...
With his legs.
just his fucking tiny little frog legs.
I was literally laughing the entire time, just looking at his legs.
You're not used to seeing it. It's like seeing something that should not be.
Yeah, I was just losing my mind about it.
He still is.
Still am.
He'll never forget that. We gotta find that scene, put it on a shirt, and give it to Mitch one of these days.
Oh, man.
Or like a card, print it on a card.
Oh, man. I can't think of any other really good or bad effects. We already mentioned the sparkles from Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that was awful.
That
It
was
wasn't
garbage.
the worst. I liked it's not a transition, but I liked the way Past's flight was dealt. Because, like, not even just the way it was dealt, how Gonzo and, like...
Just
these
freaking
other
latches
rat-
on.
Yeah, they just latch onto Scrooge's leg or something.
With the rope. Yeah.
With the rope.
And then they crash into trees and Rizzo meets a cat and gets chased everywhere.
Just the idea of them just, hitchhiking a ride into the freaking past just sounds like...
It's so weird. But, like...
But they make it work.
Always, yeah.
It's hilarious. I just love the way that Charles Dickens was played in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
You mean, Gonzo's performance?
Yeah. One thing I want to mention is...
Yes.
I think we already sort of mentioned it, but when Scrooge got the gift from Beaker,
Yeah, we did. That was cute.
I just found that really cute because I wasn't... There was a lot of things at the end that I didn't expect the most. Like the fact that he got a gift, he was just going around town helping everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everyone.
And he went to the Cratchit house on Christmas Day.
Yes, instead of waiting for the next day.
That threw me off, and I really liked that.
It was good. One little thing I want to mention briefly was the costume change. It was very subtle that Scrooge underwent. In the beginning of the movie, he has this big black cloak and these black leather gloves. And when he's had a change of heart, goodbye gloves, goodbye cloak.
Goodbye, Kane.
Oh my god.
Yes! Not whacking people out of his way anymore.
This is why I love watching movies with these two, because they catch stuff I don't.
You catch stuff too, though, sometimes that we don't either. We all catch stuff for you.
Yeah, that's why it was good to do this podcast.
Yeah.
Of the three of us instead of just the two.
Hey.
Oh.
Love you guys. Group hug.
Oh,
Yay.
I love y'all too.
Is there anything we want to mention before we all do our final thoughts? Or are we good?
I liked how he, once again, talking about the gift, a lot of adaptations like to depict Scrooge with a red scarf.
Yes.
I'm not taking crazy pills here, right?
No.
That's pretty common.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I like how he earned it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And also just like a little comment in the beginning with Beaker and Honeydew. The way Honeydew just leans forward with his hand on his cheek.
So, the money. You gonna donate or what?
That just gives me life. Just the way he's doing that.
Or when Beaker's jaw drops when he hears what Scrooge says, and then he closes it himself.
Yeah.
Oh.
Apart from that, there's just two little things I want to mention.
Go ahead.
One is at the very beginning, they're introducing everything, and the intro title card comes up, and it's just like, they set the universe extremely well, because, yeah, it's A Christmas Carol, but it's also the Muppets with talking vegetables and pigs who are talking about having lunch after brunch, and it's just a good way to set up this, like, semi-serious but also Muppet-esque.
It feels like a properly whimsical kind of...
Yes!
Thank
There
you.
we go. Whimsical, but not
A
stupid, not pandering.
a proper Christmas Carol story always is whimsical in one way or another.
Yes.
Because it's Christmas.
Especially
It's
when there's
Christmas.
Muppets.
Yes.
I'm surprised, Juliet, that you didn't comment about the Swedish Chef's cameo.
Oh, I love that.
With the singing grapes. My mother taught me to never eat food that was singing. Yeah, it was good.
One thing I want to also talk about, it actually doesn't have to do with the movie. It has to do with this one YouTube video I saw of Adam Savage, one of the hosts of Mythbusters. He went to, I forget who, the people who I believe worked on Avenue Q's puppets, and
No, didn't you go to see the Lion King puppets?
I forget who, but he actually made a Muppet-esque character with
Oh.
them. And it's this 25-minute video of him designing this character and just building everything from scratch. And it's a fantastic video.
Oh, cool.
I just wanted to mention it because it's so interesting seeing how the Muppets are from production to the end of what they actually look like to the viewer. And just seeing that video makes me really appreciate the puppetry in all of these movies.
All right, I think that's a good note to end on. Let's all give our final thoughts.
Oh, you go... No, it's always a good mistake to go with me first because, then Mitch is like, oh, man, I was totally going to say that.
Yeah, you're
Mitch,
right.
you go first.
Let's go with Mitch. We'll cut this debate out, too.
No, we're keeping it in. But, I just really liked this movie. They kept the tone very well. In terms of A Christmas Carol, it was very much in-universe. They kept the tone when they needed to. They adapted it when they needed to. They kept all the characters pretty much the same. They added little things that I appreciated, like at the end with going to the Crash House on Christmas Day instead of the day after. And overall, it's the Muppets. What more can you say? And I say that knowing Nate is going to have some paragraph ready to be super in-depth and everything.
Juliet?
All right, so a wonderful adaptation of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol. What they added, some of it didn't work, but what worked, they knocked it out of the park. Definitely add this to your collection of Christmas movies if you have not already, and definitely use this as, also maybe if you have kids, a segue to get them into the book and Charles Dickens' other work. It's a delightful film. Watch it every Christmas. You won't be sorry.
And now my final thoughts. By far the best adaptation of A Christmas Carol. The Muppets are the winning reason here, as is Michael Caine's fantastic performance. The original story is, despite its dark moments, ultimately a very whimsical tale. It's of a man relearning the Christmas spirit through supernatural events that are not even just the literal term of magic, just a certain degree of emotional magic behind that. That I feel that a lot of adaptations forget when they're trying to make it into a grounded, trying to display the crotchety old man, the grime of the Victorian era. The Muppets, through their very nature and the comedic writing, managed to bring the adaptation closer to the whimsical nature of A Christmas Carol as it should be. And in the process, they provide the perfect counterparts to Scrooge in this case. You have these whimsical creatures, and you have this solemn man. But in the process, Michael Caine, due to being a serious actor and taking this role seriously, he gives a more human performance of Scrooge than I have seen in any other adaptation. Even when he's crotchety, you can still see the occasional spark of humanity within him. And he actually makes the transition in character feel like something that is possible. Like the way he is starting to smile and dance along with the Ghost of Christmas Present.
Yeah.
The heart behind his words when he's speaking about Tiny Tim, and then finally just culminates when he is giving the gifts to the people around town. This is the best evolution of Scrooge in any adaptations. Other ones are too abrupt. The acting is only good for either the crotchety man or the good man. They're never good for both. Michael Caine knocks it out of the park for both.
All right, those are our final thoughts on The Muppets Christmas Carol. And now it's time for me to introduce our next movie.
Oh,
which
my.
coincidentally, I did not plan on this, also has Michael Caine in it.
Really?
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
Guys, our next film is one of my childhood favorites, Secondhand Lions.
I have no idea what this
No idea either.
I think you're gonna like it. I won't say any more. I will say more in our next episode next week. Alright guys, this has been another episode of How Have We Not Seen? Thank you for tuning in. Like and subscribe. Have a good one, guys.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Later.
Bah, humbug!